Before we get started, could I ask Mario a question from our Munich chapter? Is
Yes,
there
please.
is still an Edgar Michaels in your chapter? He has a cuckoo clock business.
I'm actually a accelerator in the first year, so I don't know all the people because the Munich chapter is very big. Um, so at the moment, I don't know. So
When I first joined EO back in the 2018, I had a trip to Munich and I reached out to a fellow EO person and he showed me around Munich a little bit there. So
that's amazing. Yeah, thank you for the
sorry I hijacked
opportunity.
a minute.
I appreciate it.
No problem. No problem. As Ami said, I'm Kristen Kopp. I work with Align 5. Our space, we have a co-working space, Align Space, in Westchester, and I believe we were a strategic partner this year in hosting some of your events, the EO Accelerator trainings, and some of your other events. So if you're ever in Westchester, feel free to stop by at our space. We're at 2 West Market Street. Stop in and we'd love to show you around. So I am a self-proclaimed assessment sort of junkie. I love assessments for personal and professional development. And I got interested in the working genius concept really right when it was launched. They started teasing it out sort of during COVID. And obviously it stems from Patrick Lencioni, the Table Group, their offerings. So they have the 5 dysfunctions of a team. I don't know if you want to just put your hand up if you're familiar with that concept with Pat Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions. So that's kind of their original assessment that you can use for teamwork, and it's really about establishing a trust within your leadership team so that you can freely share feedback and be productive. I love the working genius mostly because to me it resonates in the entrepreneurial realm because it's really talking about energy, and so it's really talking about working in areas that give you energy and areas that you can consistently work, which are your competencies, and then potentially some areas that may drain your energy. And for me, generating that awareness, both for myself and then understanding how it looks on your team, can help in a lot of ways. It can help with fulfillment in their current role. It can help with setting up meetings that best serve the people that are attending those meetings. And just in general, as you are, as most of you are founders or CEOs running a business, a lot of times the energy, sort of the energy that you're putting out sort of sets the tone for the leadership team or for your business. So I feel like it's really important for entrepreneurs to be able to protect their energy. And this was one assessment that to me spoke to that. So if you can put your hands up, how many of you are familiar at all with Working Genius? You might have done some reading on, okay, Mario, Tom, a little bit. Okay, so I'm gonna pop up on my screen just an overview of what the working geniuses are, sort of the concept. So this concept, and Pat Lencioni is so great about putting things together in a way that makes sense with little acronyms and things like that. So essentially, it's talking about 6 areas of work that all are part of the work cycle, and then individuals have all 6 that relate to them. 2 will be a genius, 2 will be a competency, and 2 will be a frustration. And they talk to you about using it. When I did my certification, it was interesting to understand sort of the scores to figure out sort of where you fall. And they really view it as more of a rating versus a ranking versus a rating. So you're going to have, if you choose to take the assessment, and I would like to offer that, if you would like to email me afterwards, I'm happy to send you a link for the assessment. You will get a 6-letter result back. And in that particular order, that ranks you from genius to frustration. So just a general overview of what the different geniuses are. They start with wonder. So it follows sort of ideation to execution, if you think about the workflow in that way. So wonder is, asking the question, what could we be doing? Then you move into invention, which is what are some new ideas you can take from that. From invention and the ideas that you've generated, you go into discernment. So then you start to select the ideas that make the most sense. From there, it moves to galvanizing, which is getting excitement around the ideas that have been selected. You move into enablement, which is then putting a plan in place and helping the team or helping people that you're going to ask to execute along the way. And then tenacity is the final. So that's the execution and completion of tasks. So if you think of it in sort of a project flow, you're going to start with WIDGET, and and a completion of a project has to go through all of these phases. So it really becomes about who on your team can you leverage in their capacity and in your capacity to kind of move you through those different stages. And sometimes the working genius.
Can you go more into Wonder, because I understand all the other, but the Wonder I don't get it really.
So Wonder is a lot more open-ended. It's really just asking the question why and being comfortable with. A lot of times, people that they're geniuses in Wonder, they're not really concerned about what are we going to do with the ideas that we generate. They're just always, why? How could we do this better? Is there something else we should or could be doing? So they're great. That's a great person or people to have in some sort of brainstorming session, because they're very comfortable in that. They're not worried about how will we do X if we decide to move forward. So it's a little bit more of a unique genius, to be honest. And in all of the assessments that I've shared, it's probably the least common as far as being in a genius. For a lot of people, it's their frustration to be actually, because they're not comfortable.
Does that describe your typical entrepreneur?
So I think invention is a little bit more what I see in an entrepreneurial profile. So it's maybe stemming from that wonder, what are some new things that we can do? Let me invent some new opportunities. And wonder might be in the competency realm then for an entrepreneur. Those are great questions. So obviously, as it goes through those 6 stages, you have the different profiles. And my profile, so I lead with tenacity, which is getting things accomplished, execution. And then that's followed by galvanizing. So I'm also like a champion of initiative. So my role, I serve as CEO as his chief of staff. So where this benefits me in my role and where it benefits him that I have galvanizing is if we're setting strategy for the company and we have an initiative we want to move forward, I naturally love to champion an initiative. I get excited about it. I can put some sort of structure around an idea, and then I can share that out with the team or with potential customers. That's something that actually gives me a lot of energy. When my next 2, my competencies are invention and discernment, so coming up with new ideas and deciding. And then my frustrations are enablement and wonder. And for me personally, I'll share, how this benefited me in my personal and professional development. I actually used to be a teacher at one point, and I love a lot of what I do is educating. We have a coaching business where I educate coaches. I really do. I love learning, but the active enablement, which is really leading people with a very specific plan, drains my energy. So I found when I was leading a team, I was doing some operational work at one point, and I had a small team. I felt very, I don't want to say overwhelmed, but I really didn't feel like I had the leadership that I sort of thought I had for the team, because what was happening was they needed a lot of hand holding along the way. And again, as a galvanizer, I would get excited about a project, but I wanted to sort of hand it off and then have people go along their way. And when I got back my working genius and realized it really had nothing to do with my leadership style, it really was more reflective of my energy. That gave me comfort in knowing that, okay, this is something that's a normal feeling for me to have. I certainly can work with the team and provide the support that they need, but I have to realize that it's probably going to drain me, and I have to put some structures in place that can help me sort of overcome that if that's my role to lead the team. So does that make sense to everybody? Any questions on the six geniuses?
So Kristen, they're not necessarily like, I think I made an assumption without even actually really thinking about it, that like your top ones are going to sort of be next to each other, and then the other ones, sort of flow in rhythm, but that's not necessarily the case, I guess.
No, and that's a great question. You may have, I mean, a lot of times they will sort of make sense with one another, but they're not always, to your point, adjacent. So you don't always sort of stay in one realm of the workflow. So we have wonder and invention that are part of the ideation. Then you have discernment and galvanizing that are part of activation in the work cycle. And then enablement and tenacity are implementation. So you may have a genius in the ideation stage, but you also may have one in the implementation stage. So it's just realizing where you have where your strengths, or what actually, again, what gives you energy. A lot of times too, when people go through this assessment, they may not naturally realize what their genius is, because they may not, and I'll use galvanizing as an example. It doesn't necessarily mean you're super outgoing, or they sort of associate it with maybe like a personality style. It just means that gives you energy, sort of getting behind an idea and getting other folks excited about it. So sometimes it's not as obvious of like, oh, this would match my personality of being, more introspective with wonder, and or more extroverted with galvanizing or tenacity. So it is interesting to see that and sort of recognize, okay, these are my geniuses. As with most assessments, we encourage folks to don't worry about trying to overcome your frustrations, because that you're just going to be fighting against sort of your natural capacity. Really work on enhancing your geniuses. So figuring out ways that you can sort of feed your geniuses will benefit you more than trying to overcome areas that drain your energy. And I can share out these handouts as well. This gives you a nice overview. I like this model, this sort of visual with sort of how they work together. So you can see they have the widget, that's the acronym for the geniuses. They have on the left, to the left of that, the different stages of work. And then they have what they call the altitude, which is they sort of have them starting up with ideation, which is sort of up in the clouds, moving down to the ground. That's sort of the visual they put behind it. And the way to think about this is, I'll share a great example of how working with my CEO, who's like kind of a typical entrepreneur. We had a training that we were delivering, and I had prepared all of the logistics around it, the room set up, the agenda. He was really just there to share content and knowledge. And we were meeting the night before we were going to be hosting this training. The room was set, everything was already in place. So we were really in that implementation stage of work, right? We were like ready to execute. In 12 hours. We were going to have 15 people in the room. We're delivering training. And John he leads with invention and discernment. So he's up in the ideation activation is kind of his genius. So his feedback on getting ready for the training was, I'm not really sure how I feel about the room layout. Maybe we should move things around, and started at this point trying to make changes in what was already in place. So it's kind of moving backwards in the stages of work. And as you can imagine, with somebody who's, I'm in my tenacity mode, and I started getting super anxious about the whole process. And so what I love about any type of assessment that you take, it gives you a language to use to share with somebody. And I said, hey, I think we're having like a working genius misalignment. I said, we're already in, like, we're go live very soon. And I appreciate your feedback, and we can certainly take it into consideration for a future training, but we're kind of past the stage of invention and discernment. We're like, it's go time. And so at this point, I don't think it makes sense to go backwards in the work cycle and to take this into consideration. And I felt comfortable saying that, because that was a nice way to say, instead of it being something personal, like, I don't appreciate your ideas, or this isn't going to work. It really did. It kind of gave me a language and a way to describe the situation that removes the personal from it. So I think that can be really helpful in a team setting. It doesn't become about, well, I don't like your idea. It can just be, hey, we're not in invention mode right now. We're kind of past that. So let's, next time we'll involve you in the conversation around invention to share your ideas. Pat Lencioni has a podcast on this as well, and he's big on invention, and he'll say they'll exclude him from meetings, or they'll set the tone of the meeting. Hey, this meeting is really for execution. So everybody just kind of keep that in mind as you're sharing. It just sort of sets the stage for everybody to participate in a way that makes sense, but that's also productive for the team morale and the team productivity and all of the above. Does that make sense? Tom, you know John, so you're laughing at that.
Yeah.
You know John as well.
I'm laughing too, because I have somebody on my team that would have no problem just saying, Tom, shut the fuck up. We're not doing that right now.
Well, this is a more like sharing way to do that, where it makes sense. And for me, it made a lot of sense, because I thought, why in the world is he telling me this? We're in that mode, but then it made sense, because that's how he approaches getting work completed. Is there a new idea? Can we pick a better way? And at this point, we were sort of past that.
Cool.
Ami, any insights to how you work with your team on this? I know you and your team a little bit more closely. Does this resonate with you?
I mean, it does, but the joke in my team is that they call me the arsonist, and I set everything on fire. Their job is to keep me from burning the building down. And so there's definite checks and balance that they know they are well allowed, and it's permissible for them to tell me to zip it at any time. And it's a healthy balance. But it works.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what can be important to know too, as a leader, leading a team, or people that are reporting to you or looking to you for approval in certain areas. So I feel like what tends to happen is you have a lot of people that work in that tenacity enablement. Like, they're doing the work, they're willing to help, they like to get things done. And I know, speaking from a tenacity standpoint, when you're working with a growth company, or you're doing a lot of things are moving fast, you often have things happening simultaneously. I think if you know somebody on your team energy is filled by tenacity or enablement, you can be more thoughtful in providing them opportunities to kind of experience that. And so for tenacity, that really, it's about getting things accomplished. And I know, it's not just about, hey, I have a whole list of tasks to do, which is part of the workday, but it's that feeling of something has been completed. So if you have somebody on your team that's kind of that doer, they're your go-to, they get the work done, you're able to provide them with, hey, this is where we are in it, like, take it. I think if you can ensure that there are some finish lines for those folks, so they can experience that success and kind of take a pause and refill their energy bucket, that can be really important. Because just constantly doing task work, while that may be sort of feeding it to some extent, there does need to be that completion of it. So I think just being aware, if you have somebody on your team that's that go-to execution person, making sure that you establish either kind of milestones where they can sort of have a completion, whether it's a timeline or whether it's a certain part of the project that you say, hey, congratulations, you finished this. That will help them continue to be able to have that energy to keep doing that execution work. So that can be really important as well.
So maybe just another way to think about this, and chime in if you agree or disagree, is that, like, we all have strengths and weaknesses. So for me, I know my strengths are, I'm a strong idea guy, and I love innovation and change. And I know that I hate detail, and I hate doing the same thing twice. And so what I do is I literally build a team around me of people who love detail and love doing the same thing twice. And then and we joke about it all the time. And that yin and that yang sort of builds upon itself. So maybe it's a little bit simpler than this model, but it's just another way to think about it. We're not all good at everything. And if you get this and you figure out what you're good at, then make sure to build yourself a team around you of people who are good at things that are different, that work differently than you, and be clear and open about the differences. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think in making sure that there aren't gaps, or that you can identify the gaps. So in your case, it's going to be really important on your team to have somebody in that discernment role, because you might be the invention guy. You don't want to do the same thing twice. If that's just left to people that are executors, they'll work a lot on things that may not be the best use of their time. So you want somebody on your team that can help identify, hey, Ami's had 15 ideas. Let's think through all of them, and then let's pick the best 5 that then our team can kind of go and do their thing on. And sometimes people don't have that discernment. I'm not saying your team doesn't, but that's the kind of thing that if there's a gap in geniuses, you could end up working on 15 ideas. 10 of them weren't great. People have done a lot of work and they just sort of, that's not super productive. So that, there is a role sort of for everybody in that sense to support somebody that's going to be that idea generator and typically that entrepreneurial role.
Somebody you need to be okay with people telling you no.
Correct. Yes, you need, and under the premise that they're discerning the best ideas. So they're not saying no, they're just saying yes to the better ideas.
I understand, but you can't do it all.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I will tell you, as somebody who is, I have both tenacity. I'm also certified in Kolbe, and Kolbe is a cognitive assessment that talks about how you take action, problem solving. And my initiation there is in follow through, which is creating a structure around things. So when I work with somebody who gives me a lot of ideas, my brain immediately goes to how would we do this? And so I have to be very aware when I'm having a conversation with an entrepreneur who is an idea generator. I have to almost shut that part off until we have the conversation of, okay, those all sound like great ideas. Which 1 or 2 do you want me to move into, following through on? Otherwise, my brain spins up and I'm trying to figure out how I would attack 10 ideas to the point of, they may not all be great ideas, but that's just sort of, I have to, that self-awareness really helps me make that decision. Brian, do you have a question?
Yeah, so you gave me the perfect transition. I have my Kolbe up on the screen here, and I was going to ask, how do we use Working Genius and Kolbe together?
Yeah, I love them together. Again, really around that energy, because Kolbe really talks about the energy you expend in problem solving, and how you should approach, or how you naturally approach that. And so making sure you're not constantly working against your natural tendencies, because that then just drains you. So what is your Kolbe, Brian?
So I'm an 8-5-2-4, 8 fact finder, 5 follow through, 2 quick start, and 4 implementer for those that don't know the numbers. I think I fall in this wonder invention world. And I think that relates to the high 8, the high fact finder. But I'm curious to take the Working Genius, and my integrator has been talking to me about this since we went to the EOS conference about a month ago. So it's been on my radar, and I was really interested to sit in this morning.
Yeah. So again, Kolbe is a 4-digit numeric score, and it goes through how do you initiate problem solving. So you go through fact finder, which is how you gather information. Follow through is the second number, how you organize that information. Quick start is the third one, which is how comfortable with risk you are. And it oftentimes will align to pace. So how quickly you're pulsing. Ami, I think you're a 9 or 10 quick start. You're crazy high there. And then a 4 is implementer, which really relates to tangible, sort of how things work. They related a lot to tangible. I don't see that as much work style, although my husband is a 7 implementer, and he does HVAC design. So he's very technical in the blueprints and how things kind of align to scale and things like that. But Brian, that's interesting. I would guess you might also have a genius in discernment. So it's kind of getting an idea, doing the research, or doing that kind of thoughtfulness around that idea with your 8 fact finder, and then helping select the best idea. But I'd be curious. Yeah, I'll send you connect with me afterwards, and I'll send you a link to take it, because that would be interesting. So it really can. Again, I'm a 6-8-7-1. That's my Kolbe. So I lead with follow through. So my galvanizing and tenacity kind of align with that, as far as getting excited about putting a process in place and then execution on that. Any other questions about sort of how they work together? I'm going to show you let's see here, can you see this meetings rubric? So this to me was really interesting because it talks about the different types of meetings, the style of meetings you may be having with your team, and where they might fall in the altitude and where they might fall in the workflow, and then how to think about those meetings. And it can be as simple as, hey team, we're going to be in a brainstorming meeting. We're going to ask a lot of questions. We're going to try to come up with some new ideas. And I think just setting that agenda, that allows people to sort of participate in a way that makes sense for them. It can even be something that you say, hey, this, for those of you that, want to take action, we'll try to have some action items at the end of this meeting, but really the goal of this meeting is not to necessarily have a full execution plan. It's really more of a idea generating meeting. And again, it just kind of sets the stage. It may be something too that you don't include people in on the meeting, and you can share something as simple as, hey, we're really going to be sort of at a different altitude today, and I just don't think it would be a productive use of your time to sit in on this meeting. So we'll certainly involve you when we are in the, in an area where we think it would be most beneficial for you to participate. So you have everything from the brainstorming sessions down to sort of a more strategic meeting, and then you get into the execution part of what does the plan look like to move forward, and what next steps are we going to take, and who's going to do what. And that's where getting your enablement and your tenacity folks involved actually gets them really excited about it, because they know exactly what they're going to do and they know exactly what to move forward with. And if you're doing things like a daily huddle or doing some EOS, like your level 10 meetings weekly, you're going to have a portion of that that's going to fall into the last meeting type here, the task oriented or daily stand up. Stephen is fairly new to this. What are you thinking? How do you see this relating to your team and to the folks that you're thinking about involving in this?
Yes, it's very new to me. I talked to Tom not too long ago about even going into EOS a couple of months back. It's different for me. So bringing in Working Genius and Kolbe, it's going to, for me, for reading Who Not How and trying to find the who's there.
Yeah.
I just ran into an EOS gentleman that's going to implementation, taking his implementation training now. So I was looking to meet up with him when he gets back. But my team, we're small, we're flexible. Everybody's got their own autonomy. With that, everyone has been pretty much a genius, working positive, but the downside is we've grown. So I need somebody to come in, and I kind of got to throttle back a bit and bring our team together, and obviously keep Connor happy in this since he's come in. So that's where I'm looking for young, fresh minds, and because it's easy for us to now that we've stopped one project. Now I'm looking for other products to bring in. I'm really excited about that. But how are we going to do that, and how are we going to implement all of those things? And also we're building our service department. So it's so I've got two different entities coming together, and
yeah.
So
when I work with teams, one of the things I talk about, because it does become, oftentimes I'm brought in by the CEO and they're kind of excited about it. And of course, their team is like, oh gosh, more things for us to think about and work on, and what do we do? And I try to talk about overviews of like, okay, so now you have some familiarity with the geniuses, sort of what does that look like in meetings? And I've said to groups, just start paying attention to your day, and what are days that feel really good to you. At the end of the day, you're like, today was a really great day. And then look back at your calendar and see, was it because I got a lot done? Was it because I was in a lot of meetings where I was able to activate brainstorming? Maybe that, and I think you can start to notice trends both with sort of what's giving you energy and what activities. And it can be, I mean, people that are, when I go to Kolbe, I'm certified in that as well. When I go to those trainings, I mean, people will schedule themselves based on how their Kolbe flows. So they will have certain meetings in the morning and certain meetings in the afternoon. I mean, you can get super particular, but I think for me, for a way to not have it be a complete overwhelm to a team and to become cumbersome, it's just starting to pay attention. Hey, this was a great meeting today. Who did we have in the room? What did we get done? Did we set an appropriate, like, is it because we set the right, expectations at the beginning of the meeting? Is it because we had a certain mix of people in the room that, covered, different geniuses and were able to collaborate appropriately? And you'll start to sort of notice patterns in your business, and then you can hone in more specifically on, like, how are we using this, and then how do we use this knowledge to kind of level up in certain ways. And that makes it a little bit less clunky and being like, you don't want people thinking like the whole time they're in a meeting, what's your Colby score? Or, why are they saying this to me? So I think just sort of reflecting back a lot of times can be a starting point to think about, what's working well, what are some areas on our team maybe that need some improvement. Like I said, in that conversation I had with John, my initial reaction was like, why is he changing everything? I'm in the 11th hour. And I'm like, oh, wait a second, it's probably working genius. And let me use that and reflect back to him. And even if he didn't, I don't want to say he was like, oh, well, that's totally fine. He was kind of like, oh, I understand that. And I can appreciate that. And I can respect that, this is where we are in the meeting flow. And next time we'll have a different conversation. So I think anything that you're using to move your team forward, you can kind of gradually drip in, and then it just sort of becomes commonplace, and then you can continue to build on that because they're very robust assessments for sure. Any other questions about the meeting styles? How many of you do sort of offsites? Do you do your strategic planning offsite with a group of people that you work with, or do you kind of handle that on your own as the CEO? Brian, how do you manage that?
So we run on EOS.
Mm-hmm.
Every quarterly day. We are out of the office without distraction. And the last two we've actually done at my home, which has been good. And prior to that, we were renting like a conference room at the Fittler offsite. But we run through the EOS agenda. We're a small leadership team as well. It's 4 of us, with one of them being a fractional integrator who travels in to see us. So we just kind of follow that agenda. I mean, some of the things we've gotten into at our annual this year, we did the Pat Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of a team, just bringing up, how do we get out? And in general, I think we have really good team health. So we don't have a lot of dysfunctions within our team, but we've highlighted this year kind of like the one thing, what each of our one thing is that we want each other to be focusing on. So.
And with your quarterlies, they're probably kind of a mix of like the strategic, hey, where are we with our plan, through the execution, hey, what are we leaving with our go forward priorities for that upcoming quarter?
Yeah, I mean, it reviews the rock completion from the last quarter, reviews our revenue, profit. We look at our VTO, and then we kind of reset it. So we review, is our 3-year target still active? Is our 1-year target still active? What are the issues? As we build our issues list, and then we go through and we build our rocks, and then we solve issues, and then we redo our VTO, and off we go for the next 90 days.
Great. Stephen, do you have a regular kind of meeting pattern with your team for strategy and or quarterly priorities?
That's a great question. As you were bringing that up in schedules, our schedule and our calendar pretty much goes into the trash weekly because of the way that we deal with hospitals and construction timelines, and it's thoroughly frustrating. Over the past 6 months, I've put 2 90-day plans together, and it's just been good at the beginning, and then it's kind of flailed off because work has just gotten like the service side's gotten in the way. Like yesterday, Connor and I were out selling. I came home, I was so energized, and like the sales part was really great. It's just, but then we had to go back and look into all of the service entities, and that was draining. I'm just going back to your working genius at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, we try with an intention, but even our Monday morning weekly huddles get put to the side just because of timelines and places we need to be. And I'd like to find out how to reorganize that. Like, we'd have a Monday morning huddle, but service calls come up and I can't get the whole team together. So that becomes frustrating, and it's probably frustrating for everyone.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
So if
Ami,
you
how
have
does your
ideas
team?
how to bring that together? that'd be
Yeah, no, that's let me have Ami. Ami, how do you work with your team on the strategy piece and then sort of setting it and then moving into
We work
forward?
on, we have like an annual goals. We work kind of not in one meeting, but collaboratively, and we like set goals for the year. And then we just moved, we were doing a weekly management team meeting. We just moved, that was too much. It was getting canceled too often. So now we moved that to a monthly meeting, which is longer and more insightful, just checking on where we are and if anything has to change.
Thanks for that.
So Steve, go ahead.
And we
No, I was
really,
just saying thanks for that going
Yeah.
into the 1 month.
we also try to review the numbers in that. So only one thing, it's all of like how we doing financially and how numbers and our budget and all that.
Stephen, I think with the team, obviously, if you're moving fast and furious and kind of under other people's priorities become your team's priorities because of their need, like because of being service oriented. I think if your team can be really clear on sort of what are your key objectives for that quarter, and as they're prioritizing work that they are able to do outside of other people's requests, the work that they're able to sort of set their own agenda for, whether that's work in the office or moving things, and really helping them understand how what they're making a priority aligns with the company's priorities, I think can be important, because I think what happens when people get sort of caught up in, hey, customers are demanding this of me, these demands, these external demands are coming in, they have a hard time keeping the priorities of the company. They're going to move the company forward. So I used to have this when I led the Scaling Up Coaches team. We serviced 200 coaches globally. So like there are customers and they have questions and they have things, but we had certain priorities that we had all committed to accomplishing. So making sure that even on a daily basis, they're getting one thing done, their top one for that day and or for the week, that's moving you toward the overall team goal, I think can be really important. And sometimes team members just they might need a little help setting that and making sure that their priority is not just the most urgent thing to get done, but it's the thing that has the most impact for the company. Does that make sense? So I think that, just kind of having those conversations when you do have opportunities to do so with folks on your team can really get them in that right mindset, and then they can start to kind of establish that on their own. Because it's hard when people are making requests of you and their requests are time sensitive and sometimes out of emotion or something's not working properly, so they need it addressed right away. Anyone else have anything on meetings?
I find that slide helpful. I actually took a screenshot of it. The types of questions we ask. So we do our quarterlies kind of like the brainstorm. We have our L10 weekly. That's more, down the path than we do a daily huddle. That's down the path. So each one kind of has a different rhythm and cadence to it. So I think this is a neat slide.
Yeah, it's great. I know. I really, again, their team does a great job kind of applying the assessment to kind of work life scenarios. And that's what I like too. And again, I'll share these back out with you all. They have this chart where you have either missing geniuses on your team, or I like this, or misusing the geniuses on your team. So what it can look like when you have potentially, in Kolbe, they call it conative cloning. So if you have a lot of similar like tenacity, or if I have a lot of teams that will have really high fact finders, which means they like to have either a quantity or a quality of information before they move forward. And sometimes if you have a collective group with that as how they lead to solve problems, they get into like analysis paralysis, right? So it's like, I just have one more question. I just need one more piece of information. And somebody has to be able to say, hey, we're going to have to make some assumptions and we have to move the ball forward. So similar with Working Genius, this slide sort of talks about what does it look like on your team or within your company if you're missing Wonder, or even in this point, the example of misusing Wonder is you overthink possibilities. So you're never really willing to take action because you're just constantly like, why? Could it be better? I don't know. And so it creates that indecision. This could be you with invention. If you're misusing invention, you're creating solutions to problems that don't exist. You like to do creating. So it may not even be something that's worth moving forward for your clients or customers, but it's exciting to you to be in that mindset. So again, when you start to look at these, I think it's a really interesting slide of how they demonstrate what it might look like.
I think it's super important for the entrepreneur to understand that we can be crazy. Okay. And to understand that we can be off our rocker sometimes, and to respect that there are people around us trying to put it all into place, and that yin and yang is very healthy. It's not that our ideas aren't good, but letting the ideas gestate and circulate them and talk to them with your team and get their input and thoughts before you just run in the next direction in 5 minutes. It took me a long time to realize that.
Yeah. And I look at, again, this can apply to obviously the entrepreneur leader or even people on your team. When I look at galvanizing and I look at what misusing it might look like, it might look like me overselling an idea. I'm not paying attention to other people's thoughts about it, body language. They might just have some questions that they need to know. And I'm like full steam ahead, like, wait, like, this is what we're doing now, like everybody on board, and not really taking into consideration that people might need a little bit more background on how we came to this conclusion, or like they just might need a little bit more to kind of join me in my excitement. And so I have to be aware of that when I'm in, something that's giving me energy. I might just become oblivious to like kind of how that's impacting folks on the team. And sometimes you can misinterpret that as like, well, they don't like this idea. They're not being supportive of what we're doing. That's not necessarily the case. They just might need more information or to understand how their role falls into play. So I loved this, this chart, for lack of a better term, that just sort of outlined what that can look like. Because as you look through this, and this is one of those things that if you have this and you're kind of revisiting it on a regular basis, you'll start to recognize, oh my gosh, in that meeting, this is what it looks like. I love enablement too. When you have people on your team that really are that supportive, they very easily overcommit. So you might have somebody on your team that's always like, yeah, I got this. I'm willing to do this. And then suddenly you start to realize they don't seem to be, they seem to be a little burned out. They seem like you start to notice things, and then you can kind of connect those dots. Oh, it's because they've literally said yes to everything that's been asked and or volunteered themselves for anything and everything that's come down, come their way. So it gives you that good balance of kind of identifying it both in yourself and then potentially on your team. Do all of you that are in the sort of entrepreneurial role, I know I've had this conversation with Ami, who do you have as your support that you're working with directly? Like, do all of you have an EA and or somebody that you work closely with from, I want to say, like a tactical or kind of like a balanced perspective? Stephen, you don't? You're shaking your head now. Brian, you don't have anybody on your team?
So we are in the midst of hiring an admin for our whole team. But I'm also thinking like I need a virtual admin to just do my email. I wanted to see if this new admin on our team would have the capacity, and the more I'm realizing like I just need to be out of my inbox, because after I had my forum meeting yesterday, so I wasn't on email all day. I spent like 2 hours last night cleaning it out, which I could have been doing other amazing things with. If else we're monitoring it all day, and it definitely did not fill my cup up. It's just something that needed to get done. So even though I've been holding off this other virtual admin, I think we're going to start to pursue that, and it's an investment well worth it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Tom, how are you structured?
Yeah, so I have a virtual executive assistant, and then I have strong people that run operations. And I have a really strong person who handles all of AF&A. Most of my time is spent coaching them and developing them, and I'm still very active in developing sales and marketing. So I've got a new initiative I'm working on there and hoping to hire somebody and hand that off as fast as possible.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. This Working Genius can also be helpful in hiring. Again, just understanding what the role might need, like what geniuses might make sense for that role. So Tom, I don't know how you feel at the end of your days. If you're doing a lot of training for your team, that's probably a lot of enablement. So that's either, you know, giving you energy, maybe with seeing their progress, or it could be very like.
Yeah, actually, so to clarify, I don't like training people on the front lines, and I don't do that anymore. I used to do a lot of that. Now I've got like people that are running in charge of operations. They're providing that front level training. I'm more like coaching them. How are you going to grow your business? How are you going to grow and develop as a leader, as a person? And I do enjoy that.
Yeah. Interesting. That may be more of like a Galvin. Like that's how I felt about it too. I'm full of resources. I love sharing ideas, but I want people just to take them and like apply them and like go with it instead of having to, you know, what's next. Mario, do you have anybody in your business that's supporting you in your founder role?
So I also look for enablement at the moment. I have actually all the other working geniuses I have in my business, but the E is missing. For example, when I need to prepare the working environment for the staff, but for me it's like very stressing work and I don't like to do it. So I think this would be perfect for enablement. And,
Yeah,
hopefully soon
to fill that gap. Stephen, how about you? Do you have anybody that works with you on your on an admin side, or are you kind of a?
We do, but we're also in the process of hiring somebody.
Yeah. And then Ami, I know if you want to share kind of what your journey has been in that, that's probably.
I mean, I think it's important that support doesn't only come in an admin role. So in my executive team, I deliberately, the members of my executive team have very different strengths and personality types than I have. And I think that's extremely helpful. Like we yin and yang each other really well. But on the admin support, I tried it a couple of times. I added a chief of staff, a little bit like Kristen, and one of her responsibilities is I'm no longer allowed in my email box anymore. And I'm down to dealing with 5 or 6 flagged emails a day instead of 600. And it's the best investment. I think it's the best investment I ever had. I feel like my brain feels completely liberated.
And I'll share this really quickly, just for future thinking, or Brian, as you're looking to hire, you know, sort of, I love talking about being a chief of staff as well. It's one of my favorite topics. But how I differentiate myself from of an EA. I mean, I do a lot of EA in my role specifically. I don't really have an admin. I probably could use one for myself. So I do everything from calendaring to strategic planning with John. But I think a lot of it's around the mindset. So I came into the admin really understanding the entrepreneur I'm supporting, what's important to him, what his style is, how to schedule him strategically. I never just book a call based on like, oh, you have this window open. It's what's happening before, what's happening after, what's like, where do I need your energy that day? So it's just a different level. And same thing with email. I don't just read his email as like, hey, you need to read this. I try to handle anything I can and take it off of his plate relating to like admin. But I'm also fully competent as answering either as him or on his behalf, because I understand where we're going strategically. I have a clear idea of what our priorities are. So I'm able to sort of troubleshoot, or at least screen probably 80%, and there's probably 20% I need to either have a quick conversation with him about, or, you know, just make sure I'm thinking about it in the correct way. But I think, as Ami said, I think that can be a really, really powerful person to have as part of your team. And it could be somebody you already have on your team that's doing some admin that you feel like that you could level up. And it's just having that conversation around, hey, what do you think about kind of taking that admin and expanding it? Sometimes people can kind of grow into a chief of staff role. So I'll put my email in the chat. You're welcome to email me. I'd happily send anybody a Kolbe link
Hey,
at
Kristen,
no cost.
what
Yeah.
other responsibilities do you have as chief of staff?
Tom, what do I not do? No.
Yeah, well, that's okay. That's what I figured. But like, I would love to get some insight into that. And like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I have a great resource too, if you're considering it, like how to think about it. And and there are things like rubrics where you can kind of take folks through, kind of grow through the process. I do everything from like, hey, I liaise with John on strategy and everything down to, hey, let me book your travel. So I'll kind of do anything and everything. I think where I add the most value is in that strategic scheduling and, answering on his behalf. Like I'll do anything I can take off of his plate that's not just, admin related, that's like higher level admin, I think is where I add value. Yeah. But I put my email on the chat. So if you are interested in a Working Genius link, a Kolbe link, anything on chief of staff, just shoot me an email and I'll happily send through stuff. And Betsy, I will send you the PDFs that I've shared with the group so that you can share them out with the recording if folks are interested.
That's perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Any last questions?
Thank you.
Kristen, you want to ask people to go around and see if they have one key takeaway?
Yeah, of course. That'd be great. So I see Stephen first. Stephen, what's your one key takeaway?
Oh, it's easy. The agendas.
Oh, good. Okay, great. Tom, what's your one key takeaway?
Yeah, just thinking about being strategic and putting people in positions where they can do the work that gives them energy versus the work that drains their energy.
That's great. Yeah, win-win. Mario, what's your one key takeaway?
About setting the right meetings.
Fantastic. Brian, how about you?
So how this just all fits into, I've been thinking a lot about what my 100% bucket is and, what's going to fill my bucket versus what drains my bucket. And then I think the idea of looking back on your day and was this a good day or not? And then what did I do today to like understand what that 100% piece is?
Awesome. Connor.
I would just say kind of putting people in the correct roles to create more of a synergistic workflow and workplace.
Fantastic. Bruce.
For me, I think I need to kind of step back to basics and figure out where I fall in these scales. And I'll send you an email trying to
Yeah,
for some of them.
Yeah, it's really helpful when you see your own, then it sort of starts to make sense and you'll start to understand how, oh, this is what it looks like. Oh, this is why I'm leaning towards working this way. So it can be super helpful. That's great. Yeah, I'm happy to.
Yeah, I think I've changed in the last, since I did these types of things many years ago, 20 years ago. And I think that, as I look at the descriptions, that I should come up with a new profile for myself.
That's great. Great. Michael.
Yeah, so for us, I mean, we've always just looked at people, how strong are you technically to just get the work done? But now it's kind of more about strategy. How can we help you? How can you help the business? What's the overall picture look like and how's that all meshed together?
That's great. Alicia. You're on mute. I'm not sure if you're able to answer because you're not on camera, but if you have anything. Chad, I see you dialed in. Can you unmute and share anything you took away?
Yeah, I used to look and I used to love the phrase, get the right people on the right seats on the bus. But now it seems like we need to get the right energy from the right person. So that's kind of my key takeaway is going to be going back to the leadership team and finding out what energy, charges each person and then allocating resources to that person and taking away things that are not energizing those people and putting them to the people that are getting energized from it.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's kind of that concept around unique abilities. Like, don't do the work that's draining you when somebody on your team would be super excited to be doing, doing X, Y, or Z. So that's a great point.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Yeah, of course. Ami, anything from you?
I'll just come back to my constant philosophy, which is I'm constantly trying to get myself fired. I mean it. I'm constantly trying to find people to do things I don't like to do, or I think there are people that are better at it than I am, and the cheese keeps moving. The more I try to get myself fired, that I keep my responsibilities keep evolving, which I think makes the business grow.
Yeah, and I love Stephen had mentioned Who Not How. If you haven't read that book, it's such a great book. And it's great for not only you, but for people on your team that may be overwhelmed by trying to figure out how they're going to do things, and really just shifting that to like, who do we know that might be better equipped to do those things can really expedite productivity. Betsy, do you have anything with Rowan? Do you have anything you want to add to this, or are you good?
Sorry, I've got a crying baby. I'm okay.
Oh, no worries. Well, good. Well, thank you so much for having me join you this morning. It was my
Kristen,
pleasure.
you're
to talk
amazing.
about
Thank you
working
so
with
much for joining
Thanks,
us.
Of course,
Thanks so
yeah.
much. Take care.
I look forward to hearing from some of you. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thanks,
Have a great
Kristen.
day.
Appreciate it. Thank
Bye,
you.
Appreciate
everybody.
it. Thanks, Kristen.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.